In preparing to build these boxes for the Borax wagons, we assembled about 1,000 feet of 1.5-inch yellow poplar, and also the main beams that will hold the main part of the box together. We also took ash and made the framework that will go underneath the box that all the iron will attach to, and the frames that will go up the sides that will actually give strength to the sideboards. So these beams are 4-inch wide, 5-inch thick, 16 feet long, and you see they're not quite straight. So in getting ready to put the floorboards on the framework here, I'm going to take and make sure that we have our framing square to begin with. So I've cut some spaces for the front and the back. That's going to give us the width that we need when it sits on the gear. And we have a little bow in the center of these 16-foot long beams, so we're also going to put a spacer in the center and pull these beams where they need to be so they are straight. And these beams are going to be what holds the floor. So in order to make sure that this wagon box is going to be square, I'm first going to take and measure kitty corner from corner to corner and make sure that our framework is square so we can start to fasten the floorboards onto the framework. So we're going to begin at one end. This happens to be the front end of the wagon, and I have all my floorboards cut to width and planed to width. And we're going to begin to assemble the floorboards. So even between the front clamp and the middle clamp, I'm going to put another clamp and just make sure everything is straight as we go down. Now it might seem kind of odd, but we want all the nails to be symmetrically spaced, so I take the time to mark them out. And being hardwood, actually going to pre-drill everything so that when we nail these boards on, that they don't end up splitting out the ends of the boards. These old original wagons were nailed on. They weren't fastened with screws. And so we're using a nailer here to put in a round head nail so that they will have the finish head just like the original ones. The only advantage is here I'm using an air nailer instead of putting everyone in by hand. But as we progress down the bed of the body, we're going to continue to make sure that we are straight and everything is in the right positions. This will be the second to the last floorboard, and this will be the last one that I'll put on at this time. I'm going to leave the very last one off until we get the sideboards on and the tailgate on. Then the width of that board will be determined at that point. So now with our floorboards on, we're beginning to assemble the sideboards. We're going to take the yellow poplar and attach it to the main frame. And we have it marked out, the spacing where all the upright 2x4 ash framework needs to go. So initially here I'm going to clamp the framework in their correct positions. Each of these are bolted to the side panels themselves. This all gets bolted together with 1/2-inch carriage bolts and square nuts. One through the board, and then we're also going to put a 1/2-inch bolt through the main frame. This is going to give us the correct spacing of the framework, and this is what actually gives strength to the sideboards when the weight of the borax is fully loaded upon these wagons. When our spacing of our framework is there, then it's just a matter of continuing to build our sides up and attach them to the framework as we go up. So this is just the step-by-step process of building the sides of the boxes themselves, getting them in position, getting them bolted to the 2x4 ash frame, And it's just a matter of a lot of holes, a lot of drilling, and attaching them to the framework of the box themselves. And everything is clamped into place so our joints are tight. And everything, of course, is double checked for square and straight as we go up the sides. The top board is only going to be about 9 inches in width, where the sideboards, predominantly they are all 11-inch wide. Now, before we've assembled these, we actually go through and do some sanding on them too. And this is Mark Smith that runs a cabinet shop here in town. He stopped by and helped run the orbital sander, and you can see as he's sanding in the process of building both wagon boxes, trying to keep them going at the same time. So inside the 2x4 framework, there is a significant amount of ironwork that goes up. These are 1/2 inch thick, or I guess these are 3/8 thick, 2-inch wide. And they all have to be drilled. So you can see the only one in the shop here that has any color. This is my wife, Diane, as she set up and drilled hole after hole after hole in these side irons. Then we put them in and drill them out for 1/2 inch bolts. And then the first ones we're going to put on are the irons for the front of the box. Now there's a cleat inside on the end of the boxes, and one goes on the inside of this cleat and the other iron goes on the outside. And so these are sandwiched between these two. So here the first one goes on the inside, and then the outside one is actually attached and bent over so it is bolted to the inside iron. And the nut is fastened there, and then these ends, both front and back, are actually sandwiched together with 1/2 inch bolts. So underneath the box, there's a number of cross framing, and the irons that go up the side are also attached to these cross frame. So we're going to position all these in their proper place, and with the use of a floor jack, we're going to position those into the right place. And then we're going to fasten the iron to the sideboards, and there's a couple of bolts that go through each board. Make sure these are all evenly spaced. And then the bolt that goes through the framework has a nut on the bottom of each one. This framework here is a little longer. This is the 2 framework that carries the water barrel on each side. But each one of these cross frame members has an iron strap that goes through them and is bolted to the sideboard. So actually the weight that is carried on these cross frames is transferred to the upright boards, and that's what gives these boxes a real strength. Now you've noticed all these nuts and bolts and everything we put in there. Well, there's a process that they all go through, and there's about 1,000 of these that went into these boxes. Well, in the 1880s, the style of carriage bolt heads were different than they are today. So we went through with every single one of these carriage heads and ground them off to make them look like the 1880s style bolts. They come down right to the edge. They don't have any markings, and when you put them up against the modern carriage bolt today, you know, the modern bolt has kind of a rounded flat end, and they have these little stamped marks on the heads. Well, every one of these bolts was run past the sander, and we ground them down to an edge and took off all the casting marks. And then they needed to be all cut to the proper length. So we made little jigs to go in the chop saw, and we could just cut them all to the proper length that they needed to be. Well, when these are cut off in the chop saw and ground off, they have bright, shiny ends. So in order to get rid of that shiny new look, we took the torch and we bring the iron of the bolt to a bright red. That kind of melts all these grinding marks together, and then we dip them in used motor oil. In the process of doing that, the steel takes on this flat black look. So we do that to the thread end, which you saw I just did, and then we're going to take the head of the bolts that was just ground off and take them up to a bright, almost a white color. And this is what actually gets rid of some of those grinding marks. Well, we can't quench them in the oil when they're that bright red hot, or they would ignite in the oil. So about every third bolt, we go back to the first one, and it's finally cooled down enough that it can be quenched in oil. So we'll quench it, polish it with a steel wire brush, and then we have this flat black old style bolt. This has to be done to every bolt, has to be done to every washer, has to be done to every nut. Everything is taken up to red, let it cool down, and then quenched in oil. So the front panel of each of these wagons has some framework to it, and this is a picture of an old one. And so these panels have to be situated in order to place these upright panels. These panels are removable. The top one especially oftentimes is removed. But we're going to make sure everything is square, and in this case the front sideboards were not quite square. So you can see I'm putting clamps on at an angle. I'm going to pull this top over to the left and square up the sideboard so that they sit square against the front panel. And when that is all square, then I can go ahead and put all these bolts together, and that's what helps hold this front panel square. And eventually these get chains put across side to side on the front, and that's what helps hold this whole box square. These end up having two separate panels, the bottom one now done, and the top panel has to be put in. So I'm just kind of pre-fitting everything here to make sure the widths are right. And we'll take and put a clamp across the top and make sure everything fits accordingly first. Well, then I'm going to take these all out, and we'll assemble these on a flat panel now that I know that they're going to fit. We're going to take the upright pieces, and I'm going to mark all them out. We're going to drill all the holes. So here's our template where the bolts need to be. So once they're actually back on the box, I'm going to use those holes as our template to drill into the top panel. And again, all these get 1/2-inch bolts that have been quenched and blackened. And it's just a lot of bolts to put each of these boxes together. So here we have the front panels, the side frames, the irons. So inside this front panel is also another cleat that's going to hold it in position. And this also gets bolted in with 1/2-inch bolts. You notice we take the time to make sure every square nut is actually square with the body. So this is the inside when it looks like when it's been finished, all the bolt heads. This is the outside, all the framework is together. Obviously we're building 2 wagons at once, so we have to do everything to the second wagon. This shows both wagons that are finished to this point. Then we're going to take and spray everything with the linseed oil, same as we did the running gear. This is what it looks like when they're oiled, and we'll go into part 2 next time. Thank you for watching.